Thank you. We have a quorum, so I'd ask for a motion to approve the minutes of our last meeting.
I'd be happy to make the motion, but Chairman, I just want to advise. I want to add in something is missing. Should we make it after the motion? Yes,
Yeah, during the discussion, Bobby.
I make the motion.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay. Discussion, Bobby, now's your opportunity.
I have a question too. It's on the minute. Where is saying my comment, Dr. Kaloti noted that on page 13 of 18, the case mix index was up. And I asked Mr. Rank, and in that particular paragraph, I did also ask that particular time. I said, if I can recall the best to my knowledge, it's not a jump change. It is almost 50% increase across the board. And I congratulate Dr. Bhutan and the team. And I said, that particular time, I say, how much was the amount? I asked Mr. Rank, it is a 20 million, 30 million, 40 million, or what by the amount? So I wanted to make sure that portion is added in as correctly that the board or Mr. Rank had stated that day.
Rich, I think that's directed to you.
Yeah, and I think, if I remember right, I think the case mix index was up by 0.18. And we said that was about 2,000 per discharge on that.
No, you said 1,900.
It's on page 2.
Okay,
And I specifically asked what is the total amount that comes to.
Okay, so I can amend the minute, Dr. Kalodi, to,
That's fair enough. As long as you guys amend it, I'm okay with that. With that note, I stay with my motion the way it is.
Okay. Let me suggest, Rich, that you contact Bobby to show him the number independently and then have it put into the notes. This way we make sure everyone is on the same wavelength.
yes, okay.
All right?
Thank you, Chairman.
Okay. We have end of discussion. Can I have a vote to approve the minutes, please? Those in favor, please say aye.
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 I said aye.
Okay. Opposed? Abstentions? Hearing none, the minutes pass. Okay, thank you. Rich, we have a lot to discuss today, and there are important matters, obviously, but I think the bulk of the discussion should be saved for the budget discussion. So as quickly, but not without loss of detail, can you go through the items of the financial statement and the cash flow as quickly as you possibly can?
Sure, I will.
And you please make sure you let us know, because there is a 3 or 4 different stacks. And if you can tell me
We're
by
gonna
the
put,
headline, which stack you're talking about?
Yes, oh, sure.
This is the Excel.
Yeah, start with the financial statements, Rich.
Okay,
Financial statement. Are you talking about consolidated?
yes, I'll start with the narrative just briefly. The first paragraph talks about the significant items that occurred during the month.
One second, please. Let me make sure we're on the right page.
On page 3, yeah, that one right there. Yep. Yeah, on page,
Thank you.
okay. On page 3, I have a paragraph there of significant events in September. Just note, we received the $50 million of district revenue. We also got notice from the New York State Controller that the GASB loss or the loss on the New York State pension plan, our component of that was a loss of $33.3 million. And we did pay out hazard pay of $3.2 million to employees at NUMIC and at AHP. Just a quick note, because we did talk about the district already in prior meetings. The GASB, just note that about a week before the plan does their evaluation, the market melted down because of the COVID crisis. And if you remember, one of the indexes that used to be at 27,000 went down to about 22,000. And it was shortly thereafter that they valued the plan and they look at the return on their assets compared to an assumed rate of return of about 6.5%. That's what gave rise to that $33 million loss. And then next year, when they do the same valuation with the market already have bounced back, if nothing changed, we would probably have a reverse of that. And I'll talk about that in one of the slides of the budget in a little more detail. But given those events that occurred, if you go to page 8 of the financials, which is the consolidated financials.
Rich, before you,
Page 9.
Chairman, I have a question to Rich on page 3 and 4.
Okay.
May I?
Please, go ahead.
Rich, you're talking about on page 3 and 4, the numbers are all over the place, all over. We received 50 million in DSRIP, of which 75% you are going to allocate to 2019. Does that erase the losses in 2019? How does that adjust to the loss of 2019, even as difficult as it is to follow page 3 and 4 as to the losses and gains? What is the exact number as to where we are today? It appears we are all over the map with no clear conclusion, because I don't know if you're trying to adjust your books on 2019. I understand you was not the chief financial officer that time, but you still was working with us. My
Yes.
question is, Rich, I am not as maybe smart as my other colleagues are on the board. Maybe they understand much more math and accounting. But the best of my knowledge, what I'm trying to understand, it is very confusing. My question to you is, are you trying to adjust 2019 books?
What? Okay. If I'll go over that on the consolidated financials, but what the 75%, this $50 million payment that we received, it was for the DSRIP year, April 1, 2019 through March 31st, 2020. And it's a high performance bonus payment. And accounting wise, what we're doing is we're recording it according to that fiscal year of April through March of this year. And as a result, what we did is we said 75% of this is related to 19 and 25% of it is related to this year. When you go to page 9 of the consolidated financials, let me just go to that briefly because it'll explain it to you there. Page 9 of 19. You can see there on the DSRIP, we have it broken down. It's recorded in this year, but we have DSRIP and DSRIP prior year. So you have 25.5 related to the prior year and 12.5 million related year to date to this year. It's just attributing the amounts related to the particular periods to the years that are related to. Included in this statement of operations for this year, both of those amounts are included there, and you can see that right now, year to date, we have a loss of 10.9 million compared to a budgeted 64 million that we planned that we would have by this time in this year, for a favorable variance of 53 million. Part of the favorable variance is the CARES Act money, and part of it is the district money that we received.
I
Again,
accept.
following up on Bob's comment, are we going to restate the 2019 numbers because of the reallocation of that money?
We have to talk to the auditors at the end of this year to see if they want to restate, because it is a significant amount and relates to a prior year. We'll make that determination upon audit of 2020.
Say it again, please.
I said, when the
Chairman John Sardellas asked you a very specific questions. So please kind enough to re-explain.
Sure. We will, when the audit is done for 2020, we will discuss this with the auditors and see if they, because of the significance of it, whether they will restate the prior year or whether they will put it into this year's operations.
But that means to me, then that our budget will be a surplus, not a deficit, because as I can recall, originally before the new chairman came in, we was told, and I hope it is on the record, that when I said, I hope former chairman George Sunas can write down a check, when they told me we found a money and we only are 3 million or 8 million short. So if you're going to come up with a 50 million and $13 million was a deficit, that will be a surplus. Am I right or am I wrong?
No, you're right.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Since we're going to go to the next question, Chairman, may I have your permission to, since Rich is going to go to the page number 10, I have a question on the page number 7, if that's okay with you.
Of course, please proceed.
Now, page number 7, you're talking about the jail.
Yes.
Even though I see it on page 10, how much exact, no sugar coating, no something saying, I don't know, anything you don't know, please, I understand that you don't know, but what you do know, how much exactly the money county owe us in the jail, or the correctional department, whatever you want to call it.
How much have we spent so far this year?
I didn't ask for spending.
Oh, how much do they owe us?
Yes, sir.
As of September 30th, they owed us for just the 1 month of September.
I did not ask for 1 month. I'm asking you how much total money they owe us for the year or 2 years or whatever they owe us relate to the jail.
As of right now, they don't owe us anything.
They are correct?
They just paid us for September, October, and November at 1.7 per month, 1.725 per month. We got a check for 5.25 million just about 3 or 4 days ago.
So we are current on the jail contract. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Yes.
I want to applaud our chairman as well as to you and to making sure they are collected, and good job. But since you already raised the other question, and that was how much you spend on it, since you raised the question, can you tell me how much you spend on it and what you received?
Sure. If you look at page 15, that's the operations of the correctional facility, excluding the $3 million that we get annually in administrative fee. And we've spent 13.6 or $13.7 million. And we had planned to spend about 30, the contract calls for 13.5. The additional expense we've seen just recently is the lab testing of all of the inmates that come in and the quarantining related to that. That's why we're a little over budget so far.
7 of 19.
Is this we talking about on page 10?
On page 10, I'm sorry, did I say page 10? Page 15?
But then on page 10, you're also saying something related to 28 million. Can you please tell me what is then 28 million is?
On page 10? Yeah, because the 28 million has the 1 month of about $1,725,000 in it for the jail because they hadn't paid us as of September 30th. The remaining amounts are for a number of years for inpatient, outpatient, lab billing, for rental on our facilities, for termination and retirement pay, and for utilities at the jail. It's a combination.
Are you telling me, you just stated only a couple minutes ago that we are in a crunch, and I applauded the chairman and you for being a grunt. Now I'm confused. If they owe us $28 million, how we are current? Please help me.
When I responded that we were current, I thought you were just asking about the jail contract.
If you did not understood some of my question, please do not hesitate to ask me 5 times, 10 times. I understand my difficulties or disabilities of some time on my accent. I'd be happy to explain. But so you are not current.
Not with the county, with everything. On the jail, we are current as of now. As of September, they owed us a month. And in addition to that, it's everything else that they owe us that we've been trying to collect with them over the course of the last year or so.
So you're talking about you are current on maybe 1 month, but you are not current on the money they owe us.
Correct.
So since you're talking about that, would you kind enough tell me how much we spend on and we did not collect it? Forget what they owe us, how much we spend on top of that. So if you can add in 2 of them together, combine, that money will be owed. Not only just what they owe us, plus what we spend, they owe us that too. Can you combine and tell me and the board member so they know what the truth is? So it's not be confusing?
I actually am a little confused now. Are we talking about just corrections or are we talking about the county?
Just the correction and the county.
Okay, so I thought that Mr. Rank said that we were current with correction. The September, they had not paid us up until September, so that's what this page 15 is reflecting. However, we got a check in the last couple of days that have made us current. That's what I understood, but now.
But that's where the confusion, Jan, came in when I asked explanation, and Mr. Richard Rank very honestly had stated, and I applaud him for that, and that is where the 28 million is. So when you make a combine, it's very confusing, Jan. It's not easy, and I'm surprised you guys are not as confused as I am. Maybe it's a blessing that I'm confused by him, so I can raise these issues. So my question is, as honestly as he's answering, $28 million plus what we spend. So I need to know a simplest way, what is the total money county owes us, regardless of we are current or not.
And we're just talking about corrections. We're just talking
That's correct.
about corrections.
That's correct. That's correct, Jan.
Okay.
If it's just corrections, they don't owe us anything as of right now. If it's everything other than corrections, it's what you see there on the balance sheet, the due from county of 28.9, less $1.7 million that they paid us for the jail, or about $27 million.
So 28 million does not relate to the correction. that's related to something else.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Jen, for the help. But don't interfere me again second time. That's confused me more.
Okay, okay.
Okay.
You, Rich?
Yeah, just just because of the time constraints of the meeting, all I do is go back to page 9, and I just wanted to reflect that in the month, we actually had a profit of $26 million compared to a projected or a budgeted loss of 6.8 for a favorable variance of 33 million almost. And that mostly reflects the district that we were just discussing. On a year-to-date basis, we had budgeted to lose 64 million, and we're just shy of $11 million. Like I said, primarily because of the district funds and because of the CARES Act revenue that we've recorded. So we're having a favorable year to budget in a big way. And a lot of that we've talked about in the past of what we've seen throughout the crisis of COVID. I'll stop there on the financials just unless you have any other questions.
Well, Rich, yeah, I just want to make sure that everybody understands that we don't misstate this, that when you look at the actual year-to-date of $10 million,
Chairman, what are you talking about? Can you please state what page you're talking about?
on page 9,
Okay, thank you.
on page 9, under the, it says for the 9 months ended, and it says under actual, it has a figure of $10,941,000. And that is the loss that we've incurred. And next to it, there's a budgeted loss of $64 million. Now that looks very good, but I'm not going to be negative here, but I want to be real. That there is $25 million of DSRIP and $34 million of.
Chairman, can you tell me if this is what we're talking about?
I'm talking about page 9 of 19.
I somehow, there is the 64 million, I'm confused.
Can someone move the cursor to the line that Bob's talking about? That would be helpful.
Yeah, look at the
Thank
screen. That's better, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so the point I want to make is this.
Talking about
Is that yes, we are looking much better than we had budgeted, but we are because of one-time shots of dollars, not necessarily from operations, that have made up the losses. If in fact, if you took the district dollars and you took the federal state aid dollars, which have just the simple variances of those two things, and those variances were unanticipated revenue that are one time, you actually would have a loss of about $70 million, which would exceed our budgeted loss. So I want to make sure we're not overstating that, and that everybody understands that we still are, without these one-time shots, we still are in a critical environment.
And I think there's ample evidence when you look at the balance sheet. The balance sheet is, deeply in the red. So, we have to keep in mind that the corporation still owes almost $900 million.
Yeah.
The balance sheet.
Corporation owed 900 million on what?
On the balance sheet, Bobby.
So-
I don't know, Chairman, that can be disputable. And regardless of that, I go back to the Chairman, Bob Detour. Yes, we do have maybe one-time money, doesn't matter how we have it. We have it, so we want to keep in mind tomorrow, but we should not forget today. And that's equally important. So what we have, what we can do with that money that we have, we might be able to generate better tomorrow. But even though Chairman is right, that is the one shot. But what we do with that one shot is equally important.
Yeah, well, we're going to see that when we look at the cash flow in the budget.
Okay.
Okay.
Bob, any other comments you want to offer?
Okay, thank you, John. Thank you.
Rich, can you continue, please?
Okay, is any other questions on the financials? Because we'll go on to the cash flows. There's a packet that was sent out of cash flows. I just want to focus, right there, that what's on the screen now. The cash flows that were provided to the committee are the cash flows that we presented to the state. And to Bob's point, although we're having a good year now, our operating results are, as we budgeted this year before COVID and before, the district and all, we did budget $86 million. What we did is we then took that and we projected that to 2021 before we did the budget. And these cash flows show the impact of projected operations before we had budget initiatives and operational changes. If you just go down to the next page on this. This shows you a summary of the operating cash and all the details behind it. I'd be glad to answer the questions because it's based upon that. That between
I have a question on that page.
Okay.
Chairman, may I?
Please go ahead.
Thank you. I'm looking, Richard, your page. In 2021, you're showing it 122,710,000. But then you go to 2022, 23, 24, and the total 270 million, whatever you're showing. To me, it is mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling based on what record you are estimating. Why are you wiping out 122 million in a 1 year in 2021, and you go to deficit the next 3 years, almost combined 3 year into $687 million. Are you telling me there is no income at all from 2021 to 2024 at all? Are we crazy?
Okay.
Are we crazy? Are
No.
you telling me we are totally going to lock down our doors and we're going to have not a 1 penny income and that's it?
No, what's on this first line is our cash balance at the March 31st of each of those years. Let me scroll down one other page for 2021 to show you where that 122 comes from. On this
But before
page,
you go to that second page, I have, so you can combine both questions into it. How much you spend in 2018, 2019, 2020 while you're in 20s? Do you expect it's 100 million for the next 4 years? But tell me how much you spend the last 3 years. So there is at least a balance of understanding by the board and us of why you coming up with wiping out $122 million for 1 year when your last year deficit was 13 million, even though some people made to God knows what. But please explain.
This is a running balance of what cash we get in and what expenditures we pay out. In 2021, we started with what we have as of September 1st on the next page down of $73 million. The big adds there are the 50 million in DSRIP that we received in September and the 34 million, or almost 35 million of DSRIP that we had in restricted funds that we brought into operations because of the loss of IGT. That's the major piece of the positive pickup of the 122 million. But if you look, it's about 5 lines down, the 50 million and the 34 million 8. That $88 million or 80 million plus the other amounts that are received in December and January. Those are things that are the one-time items that Bob Dito was just talking about. And that's what drives on the bottom of that page, the 122 million, just a little further down. Yeah. You see on the bottom, the 122, the ending cash balance. We started with 73 million in September, and we have 122 million by March 31st of 2021. mostly because of the district funds that we received during that period. It's not a full year, but Mr. Clottey, to your point, you see all the receipts where the first line up there, we receive about $30 million in revenue every month. We also spend $22 million in salaries, 4.5 in fringes, and everything else, every other line that's on there. This is just a reflection of what our operations do month over month and the cash needs of it. The reason we do this is that there are a certain amount of items that are not cash, that are expenses that are not cash expenses, such as GASB 68 and such as OPEB. There are obligations we have that will be future cash drains on the institution. And then there's other non-cash items, and you see that they're listed on the right, where we don't pay principal and interest on our bonds. The county pays it on our behalf. And they take that off of all of the services that we provide them, everything from the utilities in the jail to the share of their termination and retiree health benefits that they have to pay for employees that were at the jail, that were at the county before we split off into our own corporation. So this is just a cash flow. It's not a P&L. It's a cash flow of where we're going to be in each of the years. And if you go down to the next page.
No, but before you go to the next page, can you please stay on? Yes. No, go down. Is up, little bit up, please. Yeah, see the notes. I'm looking at the notes. I'm looking at the notes. You're assuming everything negatively or nothing. My question is, how about we assuming that we're going to receive something? Why we all assuming we're going to receive nothing? Why we assuming that we're not going to get paid? Why we assuming all those things, but not positive, but all negative? What is our agenda here?
Here's another presentation where I layer those in, but this was something we had to send to the state in order to show them where our cash position was. And because we haven't been successful in receiving the money from the county, we did not project receiving it, and that's why I made the note so everybody knew that that was the case. We're still pursuing to receive the $26 million that they owe us, but I don't want to project it out and rely on it, and then when we don't receive it, we would fall short for that reason. So I'd rather leave it out, project it on a conservative basis, and note it so everybody sees it as you have to, so you see what's in and what's out of these projections.
Yeah, but my question goes back to is, you did not answer it, but you're trying to answer everything that you can, and I greatly appreciate. I want you to know. We just want to try to make sure we understand what you're trying to tell us so we can help. That's the purpose of us to questioning, so we understand before we vote for anything. You know, it's look like you're putting in almost $100 million. Look on the same. I want to make sure that all the other board members are looking at the same page, where the summary cash needs year ending March 31, 21 to 24. I want to make sure that all the board members are on the same page. Yeah, right there. So you're talking about a capital expense of $100 million, you know, for just straight out 400 million from 2021 to 2024. Based on what?
That was based upon when Northwell looked at our facility.
I don't give a damn about Northwell. They are crook.
All right, let me just try to help out a little bit here. I think Rich is trying to, what the agenda, Bobby, is that Rich is trying to illustrate the facts. And if you look at those figures there, if you want to go back on the capital, those are figures that our own Patrick Degree has given me himself in terms of his own estimate with regards to the capital expenditures. They include the need to upgrade the electrical system. They include the need that we have to be sprinkled by 2027. They include the need that we have asbestos and that has to be abated. They include the need that we have an HVAC system that is underperforming, needs to be replaced. They include the need that we have a gas and suctions and all of those.
Chairman, I
But let me just
greatly appreciate for you to explaining. I do appreciate that's exactly what I expect from Mr. Rank when he's saying it, since he's presenting the report. You are not presenting the report, he is. So my question are directly at him, not
No.
at you.
Well, I'm a committee member and I have a right to express my opinion. So,
Correct, I agree.
when you look at, I mean, your sense of terror, and when you look at the cash, the summary cash needs is, I share that. When you look at out in 2024, that we have a deficit of cash of $270 million, I share that terror. And it comes from, those are figures that Rich has correctly put together. When you look at the 2021, the reason that I was trying to point out in the September statement, that the $10 million loss, which was better than the 64 million that had been budgeted.
And we all agree with you.
I was trying to point out that the reason it is better is because we have one-shot cash infusions. Those one-shot cash infusions allow us, when operationally, we are essentially losing $86 to $100 million this year. It's not reflected because we have these cash pickups that are one-time things that don't come from operations. So when you look at the 2021, $122,710,000, the only reason we are starting there is because we've had cash infusions. When you go to 2022 and you look at, that's March 31st, 2022, we are out of cash unless we get one-time or unanticipated cash infusions as we go forward. Because when you look at the 2021 budget, Bobby, right now, even with improvements, it's projected to lose $116 million. So when you're losing 85 million one year, 160 million another year, and it goes on and on and on because of increasing costs, you're eating away at your cash.
Chairman,
That's what that shows.
Chairman, I wholeheartedly respect that your explanation. I am not arguing. I am arguing when you unquestionably just put it $100 million every year without explanation. I question everything when somebody tell me, or based on a North Shore, North, who care the North? I don't care the North, I care the South. Let me put it that way. But my question is, Chairman, I will not accept, and I hope other board members do the same, including yourself, a unexplained number to put it on based on a North Valley report, who I consider a corrupt, dishonest, distasteful, and hurting our hospital with the competition. I do not accept anything. This is my opinion. Other board members have the same right, just like you do. It must be explained. If he did based on North Valley's report, I reject entire budget.
Well, I'll tell you what, I reject the characterization of Northwell as corrupt. That is outrageous.
That's okay. That's your opinion. We can disagree.
No, it's not opinion. You can't prove that.
my
But let me
opinion.
just tell you, when you look at the capital expenditures, those same expenditures are relatively similar to the expenditures that I detailed to you. And to
I accepted your details. I did not question your details.
You and all of the board members.
Chairman, I did not question your details.
I detailed them to you in an email, which I sent to you. I know you got. And the data and those numbers are relatively the same, and they came from our own engineering department. So they're not corrupt numbers, they're relatively accurate.
That's your opinion, that's not mine.
It's
May
not
I
my opinion. It's not my opinion. It is a report issued to me by Patrick Degree, who is the head of our engineering department for the corporation.
Chair.
May I suggest a couple of
disagree
things?
with
Number one, Bob, could you share that report with the committee?
Yeah.
We'll have a basis.
I have a question.
That would be helpful.
Sure.
Wayland?
Yeah, I have a question. So I understand if we're putting together this budget from a conservative approach, We know the projected loss of money from the hospital. What are we doing? What are we putting in place? A plan to try to address these issues. We hear problems, loss, and this is fine, even from a conservative approach. What plans are we putting in place to try to make things better? You know, what concept? What are we coming up with? You know, it's like, do we have any sort of plan in place? Any things in place to try to, you know, do something about this loss?
Waylon, I'd like to join with that comment. And there is a total of operational changes and budget initiatives in the budget, which we'll get to. But my question reflects upon yours also. Are those savings reflected in these cash flow projections, the things that we're going to be doing in 2021, which
No.
are outlined as operational changes and budget initiatives? Are they sustainable changes which would change some of the numbers we're looking at?
Yes. It's not in these projected cash flows because, like I stated, these were cash flows before we did the budget, and this was presented to the state approximately a month or so ago.
And we can all understand being conservative what you sent to the state. But for the board's purposes, I think, you know, we'd like, for example, the note about we assume we can't collect that money. I think we get uneasy about that, Rich, and we'd like to know there are initiatives aimed towards collecting that money. So, you know, that's kind of a comment I think that, you know, we would all share. Why can't we get money that's owed to us generally?
We've been talking back and forth with the county to try to get paid. We had an amount of $16.5 that they agreed to pay us before COVID. Then they held off on that. They've now asked for more documents. They even said that of the billed amounts, they said they only, for the prior years, they only have $900,000 in documentation on $8.9 million. And we send them documentation with every bill. Over the course of the last week or so, we've been submitting $8 million of bills back to them to give them the same documentation we've provided them previously, because they said they couldn't pay it. The controller's office would not pay it without documentation. I don't know if it's, you know, why they would not have $8 million. I won't even speculate on it. But we are providing that again to them so that they can actually pay us. We're not trying to collect it. We've been trying to collect it in every way we could. And if you wouldn't mind, what I'd like to do, these projections were done a while ago before the budget. If you wouldn't mind, what I'd like to do is maybe go through the budget and then show exactly what everybody's asking. When you layer in that $51 million of budget initiatives and improvements and operational changes, you can see where these numbers go.
Okay,
And-
but before you go there, Mr. Ring, Chairman, I like to join my colleague and my friend, Honorable Bill and Hobb. Yes, it's great what you're telling us, but what you're doing, what Bill and Hobb said, or we doing, not necessarily you, us as a team, we all have a responsibility to make it better. Where we're going to generate the money, how we're going to spend this money to generate it, and so we can maintain these facilities for our communities that need the most. But you still did not answer me how much you spent in 2018, 19, and 20 as a whole, just the way Chairman Bob Detour had explained that what expenses are on their way. We all understand, but can you tell me what is the expenses are last 3 years based on? And when you're talking about asbestos, Chairman Bob Detour, that's not a tomorrow's problem. That problem existing since, in case you don't know, April 12, 1986, when the county was there. We was not there, you was not there. I happened to be was in that business That's how I know. Otherwise, I would have not known either. So it is not, it is a big expense. It's a monster expense. We all aware of it. County was aware of it. County still have equal responsibility and liability in that case. But we need to know where $100 million is. Okay, you explained, but how much we spend on 18, 19, and 20? Can you please tell me what was your capital budget was on it?
I don't have those historic numbers. I can get them, Mr. Galati.
For you not to have historic numbers, which is not, too far from a current 2020, not too far from 2019 and 18, how could you come up with 100 million, a blank check for next 4 years? That's outrageous.
Okay, let me suggest this. Rich has offered to recast this, and let's address Bobby's concern that we go back to starting with 2098 or 2080, I'm sorry,
19,
19,
18, and
yeah, and go forward so we can see
I
the
do- I do have a
Thank
question.
you, Chairman. Thank you, Chairman.
I do have a question because I know that it's important for us to have the most conservative picture of the budget so we understand the severity of the issues that we're in. But I do want to know, since this went to the state, was the strategy to present the worst case scenario so when we go to the state for help, this is what they see? I'm just trying to figure out if that was part of why we do the budget this way. That's the first question. And then I also know that when you're doing the budget, it's something that's fluid, it changes. And that I know Dr. Booten and his team are working on strategies to increase patient volume and other things that could help bring in revenue. So I'm assuming that, I thought I read somewhere that some of that was in the making of the budget, but I'd like to know the answer to my first question about why we presented this to the state.
An excellent question.
Yeah, this was presented to the state at their request to explain to them what our current expenditure rate and our operations were prior to the budget. And that's why I said it was presented to them over a month ago. And it was based upon what we projected out for these years, knowing what we know about the labor contract we have with CSEA and the increases there, an expected amount of revenue we would be getting in and changes that we knew about. And to the point you raised, yes, it was presented so that the state understood how dire our situation was. Because at the time we were asking for relief because we had budgeted an $86 million loss, and without the influx of the CARES Act and the DSRIP monies and all, we would have been struggling a lot more tremendously than we are today.
Yeah, we don't want the state to think that we're doing great and then say, hey, you don't really need the help.
Correct.
So I get it.
Janet, you okay with the answer?
Yes, thank you.
But I have related sentiment with Jennifer's question, even though her question is little different than I have, but it was a great question. Rich, you presented to the state. Does that require at least the board have the knowledge what you are presenting? Or how come, or who authorized you to go ahead and do it without approval of the board? Who authorized you to go and do it?
He doesn't need approval of the board to do that. That's a request by the state.
A request of the state, is you telling me something affect our hospital chairman, especially when it's come to specifically to the finance. I think it is very important you as a leader to know, or you as a leader to inform the board that these are the requests came in, not that anybody going to falsify anything. I think that's your as a leader is a responsibility, and your responsibility is to share with the board that something is concerned the health of the hospital.
Well, you're getting share right now.
Yeah, I'm getting it right now, but that was already given.
But it is what it is.
After the fact is allowed, because remember, you are our leader, but you only have one vote and one member like us.
Let me suggest that in order to save some time here, that Rich, can you recast this starting with 2019 perhaps, so we can see the escalation or the capital, how it changes over years? And secondly, if Bob can provide us with that estimate from the engineer, we'll be able to see whether those capital expenditures are appropriate. And I think that should be sufficient to provide the evidence one way or another as to the validity of the cash needs.
Sure. Let me just make one point that was made. These cash flows were presented to the state in March. It was updated over the last month just to update it at their request. And it was discussed, I think, Mr. Detour had asked for it, and it was discussed with Dr. Booten and Megan, so that everybody was aware of what was in there. But these amounts, for the most part, were previously presented to the state in March. It was just an update.
I understand, Rich, we all going through the COVID and everybody trying to do their very best. And I know you as well as Megan had worked very hard along with Dr. Booten and other staff, but you still have almost 6-7 months. I think it is your responsibility as well as the chairman's responsibility, he's our leader, to inform if something is related to the health of the hospital. And I request in the future, when you do in this scale of information which can jeopardize or affect tremendously on our hospital, please inform the chairman, and then it is chairman's responsibility to inform the board.
Fair enough.
Okay, Rich, just to make sure you understand, I'd like to see the operational changes, budget initiatives reflected in these, what impact they might have as going forward.
Sure, and we can go over that after we go over the budget, because we do have a summary of that just to show you how that gets layered in. If that
Yeah,
was,
that's what I'm referring to, the 53 million. Okay, good.
Okay.
Chairman, did we finish the,
Yeah, Bobby, I'd like to go to the
did
budget.
we finish this portion?
I'd like to go unless you have some questions, I'd like to go to the
Yeah,
budget.
I will. That's why I want to make sure we are not on this package any longer.
I don't believe so. I'd like to move to the budget, Bobby.
Did we finish this package? That's what I'm asking you.
Yes, I believe so.
That's the
Unless you have
financial, yes.
outstanding questions.
Okay, there was only one question was overlooked was, since in ER, we have almost, due to COVID or otherwise, we are 11,000 visits so far in 9 months are we lost, which is, can you tell me how much per visit we could have lost the money?
Dr.
Bobby,
Porter,
what page you on?
I'm on page 14 of 19.
14 of the financials.
of the financials, the first one
Yeah,
you did.
I know. Trying to get to it. This one. Oh, the first one.
Yeah. 14. Right. Okay,
You see where it says emergency room totals?
yes,
So we are almost like 11,258 so far. right here. You want me to count the line or you will be okay with that?
Yeah, I know where you are, yes.
11,258. So that visit in 9 months. And it's also 1,700 admission in 9 months. Can you tell me what the numbers approximately, because you cannot be precise, how much total money you think we lost because of that?
About just on the 1,700 admissions that we lost, that's about $17 million.
What about 11,258? That will be what?
That's approximately 3 million more because it's the 11.2 less the 1.7, which were admitted, or about 10,000 at $300 a visit is about another 3 million. So the
How
total,
could be 3 million on an 11,000?
because we get about 300 per discharge, per ER visit.
Okay, thank you.
So combine those two lines is about $20 million.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rank.
Welcome.
If there are no objections, I'd like to move to the budget for 2021.
I have no objection.
Rich?
Okay, thank you. There's a one-page summary that's titled 2021 Budget Key Issues. Yeah, that one there. This is, when we started the budget process, we look at what our operations are and project that out. If we did nothing in the budget process, we didn't try to fix anything, we would have projected a loss of $167.5 million, coming off of a loss of $86 million this year. The main reason that occurs, and we've talked about this in the past committees, we no longer have DSRIP. There's going to be zero revenue in 2021 for DSRIP. And in the $86 million loss, we had $20 million of what's called VBP QIP grant revenue from the state. That $30 million gets added to the $86 million loss, and that's the major component. There's additional costs that we are going to incur because we have a 2% COLA increase in the CSEA agreement. Health benefits are going up by, each year they go up. We projected out 5% on that. And pharmacy goes up every year, year over year. In addition to that, the $167 million reflects the Medicaid rate reductions that we're seeing from the state because the state has a deficit of $14 billion right now, and they're projecting to have a $16 billion loss next year. What the budget entails is $51 million of budget initiatives and operational changes designed to limit that $167 million loss down to that $116 million. The point I made with the grants, the DSRIP and the other operating is pretty evident in that next section where it shows other operating revenue. If you look at the line without CARES, excluding CARES, over that 3-year period, in 2019, we got $240 million. In 2020, we have $147 million. And that's going down to $108 million in 2021. And the reason I broke out the CARES Act, because it would skew it to those other total lines there, which would make it seem less severe. But the reality of our other operating revenue is that drop of almost $100 million between 19 and 20, and then almost another $40 million between 20 and 21. The next section shows what we're doing, how we budgeted the volume at the hospital. Currently, as of today, we're at the budgeted level that we budgeted for 2019, and I'm excluding 2020 because of the COVID impacts. There's been such major swings, but as of today, we have 325 people in-house. We budgeted 2020, and we had an actual in 2019. 322 patients a day as an average daily census. We're seeing that now. On the outpatient side, we've seen the clinics drop pretty dramatically through the COVID crisis. They've been improving, and we've projected them out at the improving trend. Unfortunately, with the ED, it's not bouncing back that much. And what we're really seeing is there's less people coming to the emergency department, but they're more acutely ill. So even though we have, like Mr. Claudia just said, 11,000 less ED visits, we're still seeing discharges, and we budgeted in the range of what we budgeted for 2020 and what we saw in 2019. And added to that, the case mix intensity is still at about a 10% amount higher than what we had projected for the budget in 20 and what we've historically seen in 18 and 19. The only other thing I would point out here is the expenses before new FTEs in the budget that we projected for this year for a number of initiatives. We had budgeted almost 3,700 FTEs in 2020. The budget this year, excluding the new employees that we're projecting, is 3,400. That savings of 250 bodies is close to $20 million or $22 million in savings that we're seeing and that we projected in the budget. Just like to scroll down to the first couple pages of the narrative to give you a little more detail on that. It's the next page, the budget package.
Sorry.
This one? This.
Oh.
Yeah, just go down. The detail there, here's where we started. I started with a budget loss, like you see, of $86 million, the 2020 budgeted loss. And the detail of what I just talked about, just scroll down a little bit, is the loss of district, the loss of VBPQIP, the Medicaid cuts that we're seeing from the state, and included in those Medicaid cuts, the governor cut quality initiatives to the HMOs, and that resulted in another $3 million that we're not going to get in HMO quality pool payments. In addition to that, we just went through a 2017 audit of IGT, and there's an anticipated takeback of $3.8 million. They use that as a proxy for the 3 years later for 2021. So we're projecting the budget to have that out of it. And then the remaining amount is the drop in AHP revenue, because that hasn't come back because we had the expirations there, and those volumes continue to stay low, as well as the outpatient volume staying low in general. That added $61 million to the $86 million budgeted loss that we had, and that it combined with, just go down a bit, with the anticipated increases that we're seeing of the CSEA contract of 8.4, the pension rate adjustment where it went from about 16% of payroll to about 18% they're projecting, and that's partially because of the market meltdown that we talked about with the GASB 68. Increase in the one contract for anesthesia that occurred early this year, and then the two increases, the inflationary increases for health benefits and pharmaceutical, adds $20 million to that. That's where we come up with a projected $167 million loss before we do anything. what we've layered into the budget to the point that everybody's been making, what are we doing about it? We have a number of initiatives, revenue cycle initiatives here at Nassau University Med Center of $4.5 million. There's 2 initiatives for A. Holly to eliminate denials for timed out applications for Medicaid and to collect smaller amounts from the residents there through a collection effort. Then the other piece that we added into the budget is that case mix intensity factor, where we historically have always had a case mix of 0.92. We're seeing about a 1.1 increase in that, or a little over 10% to 1.03 this month, and that's the higher intensity of patients coming to our ED, because 80% of our admissions come through the ED. That's layered in with an additional increase of 7.1 million. Then the other initiatives we have is 2 new programs for the Chinese population and the Indian population, which, because it's going to be a transition year, the net impact of that is about $1 million. We anticipate about $1.5 million in revenue and about $500,000 in expenditures for that. That's because it'll start to be implemented in the second half of the year because of the lack of visitation at nursing homes. Families don't want to bring their loved ones to a nursing home unless they can visit them. So we've projected that in the budget to be a second half of the year initiative, phasing in the third quarter and growing to about 25 new residents in each of the programs in the last quarter. The last thing we talked about, or 2 things, is the observation unit that has just been put operational, and that will eliminate about 1,000 of our discharges that are denied. The observation unit rate that we have under the contracts that we have is about $2,000 for an 8-hour observation stay. We currently, like we talked about just before, we get about $300 for an emergency visit. So that delta on that 1,000 is about $1.7 million. Then there's some initiatives for outpatient services at about $1.5 million. That adds about $17.8 million in revenue. And then the FTE reduction that we've talked about is the lion's share of that reduction in operational costs. And you see it in the monthly financials that we've been talking about. Our salary and fringe benefits have been under budget this year. We've tried to hold down the labor component and the fringe benefit, the obvious fringe benefit component of that. And we think we can achieve that $33.5 million in operational costs. The combined revenue and the operational costs are the operational change in the budget initiatives of $51.3 million. We're budgeting a loss of the $116 million rather than the $167 million that we would have if we didn't do anything.
Rich, I have a couple of questions about this. Revenue cycle is a highly complex process. Do we have the talent and do we have a project plan to show how this will be achieved, and we have the people who can do it?
Yes. Yes, in both cases, both in AHPN and NUMIC, some of the employees involved with that have been onboarded, and we think it's achievable this year. We have details if you want to, if you'd like to see any of that.
Yeah, is there a project plan for this with milestones?
Yes, I mean, yeah, Dr. Boone has that, and we've gone over that to make sure it's real.
It's one of the, it's one of the initiatives that came out with the Alvarez and Marcel. We dug into it and we actually are creating our own. And so, yes, we did that for both revenue cycle and other things.
Dr. Boone, could you share that with the committee?
When we're done with it, the answer is yes.
Okay. Jan, you have a question?
I do. I have a couple questions. The first one is, it always makes me nervous, even though I know it's important to cut staff. But when you cut staff, how is that impacting our ability to be able to serve more patients?
Jen, we're not cutting staff. We're doing everything with what we have. And if we need to add staff, we will do that, but we'll only do it when we need it.
Okay, I guess I heard that differently. Thank you very much for that clarification, Dr. Booten.
Well,
And
Jen, I heard the same thing. I heard that we're going to have an employee reduction. Weren't
right, that's what I thought.
We already have it.
they? Oh, okay.
We're gonna sustain it.
Right. Yeah, that's what I was saying, that if you looked at the most recent monthly financials, if you look at the salary and fringe benefit line, you'll see a major reduction from our budgeted level. And those numbers also include COVID expenditures for staff during the crisis, which, when you look at those numbers, and we go back to the September financials, but there's been significant savings throughout the year. Our FTE count has been consistently going down, and we've been monitoring that throughout the year in order to achieve this.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I guess my other question is that I know that during the pandemic, people, advertisement, marketing, everything was don't go to the emergency, don't go to the emergency room, don't tax the emergency room. And so people stayed home. So now I'm wondering, because we are going to go through the pandemic, do you think our emergency room visits will go up back to where they were?
It's yes and no.
Okay.
So the visits started going up. When the COVID numbers go up, they stay away.
Right.
But the sick patients are still coming in.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, but I guess I'm thinking that eventually, look, I know that people use the ER as their primary care. So once COVID stops, which I'm hoping, well, it's never going to stop, but you know what I mean? It won't be at a crisis level.
So that's the other thing.
The numbers will go back up.
We're now going to be also going to telehealth. Now that we have telehealth in the building, if our patients are not coming in, we're going to be calling them, and we're still going to be working on that. So it's still going to be coming as a visit.
And what's the reimbursement? What's the reimbursement for telehealth?
It's about this. It's very during COVID. It's exactly the same, and sometimes actually higher than a regular visit.
Okay. Thank you very much.
I have 3 questions, but before I ask 3 questions, let me see if I can pay back to my sister Jen Figueroa for helping me last time to understand. If I understood her question, in my mind, the way I look at it, she's asking, okay, when the COVID is down or we are going through or whatever the effects, when there's less effects, what we are doing to reach out to our community, our needies. That's, I think, please correct me, Jan, if I'm wrong. That is the question. What we are doing, since we had a great publicity, don't go, don't go, don't go, what we are planning to do to reach out back to our families and sisters and neighbors, come, and come. Is there any plan? If
Well,
that's your question, Jen, I'm just trying to.
That's a good question for sure. But
Right.
I do know
You're not
that
telling me that wasn't your question?
it was close. I just know.
Okay, I just want to pay back, help me out that you did before.
Thank you so much, Dr.
Thank you,
Kalal.
thank you,
Thank
thank you so much. I have 2 questions.
I'm sorry, Bobby, but just one second. I've noticed recently commercials and advertising that Dr.
Yes.
Booten
Come back.
has also became an actor to encourage people to come back to the hospital. But as we know, the possibility of a second wave, that good effort might, people might stop going. But I've seen the hospital make that effort for outreach.
Mr. Gyllenhaal, my brother from another mother, I do seen that too, but not necessarily everybody watch that program where we are advertising. Beside that, are we reaching out every other medium that we can? But I'm not going to get into that question. You already answered. But I have two other questions to Mr. Richrank. Does the state or the federal government, since we have all this, close this drama, whatever we want to call it, have any program to replacement for the safety net hospital? Are you aware of anyone? Is we planning to reach out for that or no? That's question number one.
Yeah, I know of no new programs, and I have not heard of any. I don't know if they're planning any, but in the context of a $14 billion state deficit and a projected $16 billion the next year, I don't know if there's any in the works that I'm not aware of.
My humble request to the committee and especially to the chairman, any and all, a consultant we have, we should be on top of this issue and asking them if there is any and all program available for safety net hospital. They better be active looking for it and assisting you because you are our leader. And it's very important. It's just a comment and a suggestion. You don't have to answer anymore. But my next question is, what are we doing to get our rate raised? And what other area, the revenue we're trying to generate? And the final question, and mine is, since I did not get chance to read these 33 pages, even though I did all otherwise, I would have had at least 50 more questions. So I'm going to propose we should move the budget. I'm going to ask the chairman to the full board. And if there is any question, we can ask for it. As you stated, it was complicated. You guys work hard, and everybody who work hard. And I don't think we should just ignore it. At least I did not read it as clearly as I could. Everything I read, I questioned. So I will happily to ask questions that day when it's in a full board. Thank you.
Okay, I want to get back to Waylon's question because I don't want to get it lost here, and why we see significant improvements in the operations to the $51 million. Longer term, I don't think that that kind of addresses the sustainability. But Waylon, are you still on? I hope you are.
Yes, I'm still on.
I think your question is a real deep one. I think it's a concern of all board members. Why we may have initiatives this year. We're looking at running out of cash, and what are we doing longer term to restructure the hospital so it can be sustainable? Am I characterizing your question appropriately?
You're 100% correct. It's the hospital, so it's like someone going to the hospital and they've been told that they have an infection. Okay, so what's the treatment? We have all these finance meetings, we have these board meetings, and we're constantly hearing what the problem is. I'm trying to hear some sort of solution, some sort of direction, something that we can gauge to see how far are we meeting these benchmarks. But we can constantly talk about the problem. I'm just looking for, as a board member, to see more vision, more focus on, and that 51, that's fine, but that's still not really addressing the problem.
Bob, can you respond to Waylon as the chair with that particular question?
I would agree with Waylon. I would like to see a vision for some type of sustainability. I mean, when you do go to a hospital, sometimes a patient is terminal. Not always an answer. I'm not saying that's the case here, but I'm looking at this thing and I know, and I'm sharing Bobby's concern when he looked at that cash flow statement related to the fact that even with the $51 million of initiatives, assuming we are able to achieve them, we still are looking at $116 million loss this year, and it seems to be increasing every year. So we really have to do something. And this is why, when I sent out my comments earlier today, I kind of started it by saying that, the Department of Health is looking at us. And if we're ever going to get any help from them, they really have to see some type of sustainable plan. And and with $116 million budgeted loss in this budget, it looks as though, there isn't one. And so I think we really need to put this before the board for a really in-depth discussion as to what, how serious is this? What are our options? I understand people want to get money from other places, there does not seem to be a lot of money. So I'm suggesting here that we do not move this budget tonight, that we come back in February and December of the committee to review it again. I would like the staff to go back and do a little more work on, as you mentioned, the projects with milestones. I think that some of this stuff can also be presented in bar graphs that would help everybody understand exactly what's going on, so we could have a conversation. I mean, for example, we could do the revenue projections from 2020 to 2019. Well, we haven't even addressed this issue yet, but we could do the cash flow projections. We could show, use bar graphs and show the way it looks now, the way it looks if we have these projects, that they're successful, and what the shortfall is, when it occurs, so we can begin to talk about what strategies do we use to restructure, and what's the timeline here, what are the deadlines we have to meet before we run up against the, against the wall. We could look at the PI projects and have some graphs around that. But I also really think that the budget itself, there's a lot of detail. It's a $500 million budget. It's huge. It's huge. A lot of detail in it. So I think that I'd like to see, in the presentation, headlines given to the board, so the board can get a feel for what are the challenges in the board, like the cash cliff, what operational efficiencies we're going to look at. Where is there expected growth? Is there expected growth somewhere that we can achieve? Are there options for increasing revenue? And if we can't, what are the decision points? And do some scenario planning. So what I was thinking about doing was, I'd like the staff to go back and do some more work so it's presented in a way that everybody can see it better, and tease out more what our options are for improvement. And then I'd like to.
Chairman,
I'm suggesting.
may I interrupt you, Chairman?
Let me just finish the thought, then I'll stop, Bobby. Is that, and what I'd like to suggest then is that when the board has a chance to look at this stuff and really discuss it, because it's serious, that we have a committee that takes the finance committee and adds to it, that does a deep dive into the budget and a deep dive into the options, working with the staff and the projects, and then reports back to us in March. With our committee reports back to us in March with their recommendations based upon what they've ascertained.
And that would be a long-term strategic kind of initiative?
Well, it would take a look at what the current state of affairs is right now, which is we are looking at, a cash crunch, a sustainability crisis, I think, to look at what the options are for changing it and improving it, and then and come back with recommendations as to what are our options here. I mean, we're looking at $116 million loss in this budget.
Yeah, but that's, Bob, may I?
Yes, go ahead, Bobby.
Okay, I appreciate you to recognizing what I was talking about, and I'm glad you put it more precisely, maybe as accurately you could, of my statement. And I want to what is the word? Is it reiterate? Is it repeat it? Whatever I can't even pronounce it. Okay, so what I want to say is, I didn't see Jan Figueroa jumped in to help me out here, but it's all right. I will repeat it anyway. Reiterate, whatever it is, the word. So what I'm trying to say.
Bobby, I think you're searching for reiterate.
Yeah.
Okay, that's exactly what I was trying to see. But see, Jan is very cheap. She did not jump in to help me. What I'm trying to say is, I'm looking at $160 million loss versus the cash, which is $122 million. I don't, like I said, I didn't read it, the budget as clearly as, even though they worked very hard. The chairman had said there's so many details, some need to be questioned, some need to be improved, some maybe want to agree or disagree. I think this is, Chairman, my suggestion, I thought I already made the motion to move. Maybe some people did not understood what I said. And I am thinking, not necessarily pass this, I am suggesting we still should, for discussion purposes, we should give to the full board, not necessarily to pass the budget or fail the budget, but educationally, I think it is very important. We should give to our other colleagues so they have enough time to read and review, and we continue in our committee for the following what you had suggested. I have no objection to it, but I still think the full board should have look at it.
Well, Bobby, this is Jan. Don't you think that if we give the staff another crack at this and they give us more, that the board would benefit from seeing the total picture as opposed to seeing this?
Even though I agree with you, then I'm in a total, I will feel insulted. Even though you're right, I feel insulted. If that were the case, are you telling me our committee, including the two chairmen, should have given something was not appropriate?
No, I'm saying that what Bob just proposed was that the staff go back and do another look at what the cost savings and revenue generating things are and improve that.
Jen, I'm in full agreement with you and the chairman, Bob Detour. I think that's a great suggestion, is the right thing to do. That's what the leaders do. But I still think we should not deprive other board member from this basic information. What we have, they should have, or not necessarily we have to pass that day or have to present to pass that day. But in informational region, they should have this information.
But I have to say, I'm gonna have to disagree with you on this, because if you have a committee, that we are the finance committee, and so we're looking over this to have this discussion before it's brought to the board, and if it's recommended that we go back to the drawing board, I think, because listen, let's be honest, we give this to the board when there can be some correction, some improvement or whatever. Before then, we're going to have a mess, and we know how this board operates, unfortunately. And
I
so,
think, listen, it's a good suggestion. We should put to the board. If the majority member think that's the way it is, I think that's wonderful. Why not? Your suggestion is as valid as my criticism is. I respect that. I still make the motion to move.
Mr. Sardellis, you're muted, Chairman.
About that. Bobby, I think many of the questions you've asked and others have asked now can make this a better product, and the finance committee can then move it to the full board with our recommendation to approve it. I sit on several different finance committees, and it's not unusual to have 2 and 3 iterations of the budget until we find it in shape that we think it's reasonable to present to the board after we vetted it. So I would favor.
I'm agreeing, I'm not disagreeing with anyone. I'm just saying I make that motion. There's another, including yourself and the chairman and my brother Bill and Ha, my sister Jen, and my wonderful sister for a long time, Linda Reed. If they say, hey, we disagree with Bobby, then go with the board and I stand with you.
Can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
So as part of the budget that you guys are looking for, you're looking for the budget with strategic planning in it. Is that what you're looking for?
One thing that I think.
This is two different things, right? Because in 2021, right now, I'm not 100% sure where the COVID is going to be, where COVID's going to be.
Right.
We're anticipating we're going to have our second wave. And on top of that, we're also still, because I sent out the narrative. I'm not sure you guys saw the narrative. And on top of that, we're also waiting to see what Alvarez and Marcel has to add in terms of performance improvement. And that will help us in terms of what we want to do moving forward. Most of the stuff that we did was based on what we have in front of us in terms of for the 2021 budget. So you're asking us to go back and do more strategic planning to show you what, in terms of the budget, where that money is coming. Because strategic planning is a little different. For me, when I'm looking at strategic planning is what I've already told a lot of the chairs and a lot of the department heads that at some point we have to reinvent ourselves. We have to figure out what kind of a hospital we want to be. That's not something that's going to happen in 4 weeks and 2 weeks for the budget. That may take a while. So it doesn't just take the people within the hospital. That's part of the board initiative. Board has to come up to figure out exactly what we want to be moving forward and what services we want to be able to provide. What we were looking for is, this is what we have for 2021 moving forward with the amount of money that we have in the bank and what's the projection for the next 12 months. So you know, whatever it is that you guys want us to do, you have to let us know so that we can actually be prepared, whether it's a week from now or 4 weeks from now. What is it that we need to put forward?
Okay, Bob, you suggested that it be deferred a month. Do you want to make a motion and then we'll have Bobby make his motion?
Well, I would move that we defer sending the budget along until the staff does some more work on it. And the work that I'm suggesting is that, number one, we haven't even talked about some of the strategic issues in terms of how to reclass finances and stuff like that I've had conversations with the staff around. And maybe there's no need to do that right now. But it is an issue that we need to bring to the committee and talk about for transparency purposes. It has to do with, well, just being strategic and how we set ourselves up for CARES Act. The second thing is, I think that I agree with Dr. Booten, with Tony, that the budget is a budget, but the budget is a strategic document because it points the way towards behavior. And the behavior here is the board has to, I think, really understand what the facts and in substance of the condition the corporation is in and the financial challenges that it's facing in 2021. It's true that we have enough money to get through 2021. But it's also true that sometime in 2022, we're going to run out of cash. And so we don't want that to happen. So we've got to figure out some strategy to respond to that. So what I'm suggesting is that the format of the budget that's been used for years in terms of detail, I don't love it, but that's okay. But I think we need to do a better bullet point or menu of issues presentation to the board. I think graphs are very good to do this so that the board can have a substantive discussion on the issues that are facing the survivability of the institution. And that goes to things like cash, it goes to operational efficiencies and improvements. And then once we understand it better, I think the committee can then take those things and then do a deeper dive and figure out, what do we do? Is there a way out of this? Isn't there a way out of this? If there is, what is it? What are the deadlines? Because if we go through 2021 and we're almost at the end of 2021, 2021, and we don't have commitments from the state for cash, we're going to have to make some very difficult decisions in the latter part of 2021. So I want us to tee all those things up for the board in the conversation right now, so the board understands the gravity of the situation, and the board understands that we have to be responsible how we respond to this, and we may have to make some very difficult decisions and prepare ourselves so we understand what the situation is and what the type of decisions we may have to make are. And I don't think the way this is presented does that. I think we need to do a deeper dive for the board in the presentation around cash and cash flow and operational efficiencies and those types of things.
You
So
know, Bob, I think that the board does understand the gravity, and so for me, I really want to understand better what things we can do, just like Waylon Hobbs said, to improve the hospital's financial situation. And I don't necessarily, and while I think that they did a good job,
yes.
I think more needs to be done.
But Jan, I would agree with you, except that some of our board members have said we are in the best financial condition we've ever been in. I mean, they said that. So that leads me as the chair to think we really have an obligation to educate the board and get all the board members on the same page.
Bob, can I say something even though I'm not actually a member of the committee?
Of course you can, Linda.
Thank you. I have a suggestion. You know, we go into a board meeting and we hear the finance committee speak about what they passed in the meetings, and we're done in 10 or 15 minutes. And you're right, this is extremely important. And there are a lot of us on the board that don't believe, okay, that we are in great straits. I, for one, know that we're not in great straits, okay? I don't have blinders on.
Are you
I
saying
would
we're not-
suggest, no, wait, I'm not saying that you did. I would suggest that we have a special meeting, whenever, a special financial meeting. That's all we discuss that night. And we lay everything on the table and we get views from everybody on the board. Because maybe if it's all laid out and that's the only thing we're discussing that night,
Right.
you know, maybe it'll work out a lot better all the way around. But I do have to say something because I do take offense to what Mr. Hobbs said. And that was, well, you know how the board members are. I
Well,
really take offense to that.
And listen, and you can, but I'm not changing my statement. It is what it is. If it does not apply to you, it don't apply to you. But based on me being on this board and what I have witnessed, I stick by my statement.
That's fine. You can do that. I just take offense. I've been on this board a long time, and I think that we all get along extremely well. Yes, at times we have our differences, but you know what? That's the way it is. That's life. We don't always agree at all times, but I just took offense of it. It doesn't, that's just me. Anyway, my suggestion is, and I'm sorry, my suggestion is that we have a meeting that's all we discussed that night.
I
So
think
that's-
that's about, yeah, that's a
Chairman?
valid point. And it's a
Chairman?
very complex issue with a lot of moving.
Chairman,
That's what I want to. That's what I want to do actually for the December board meeting. Is have that as
Chairman?
Yeah, exactly. I agree with you.
Linda, I agree with you. I agree. With you.
Chairman,
I recognize Bobby.
thank you, sir. I want, as a unified, our message as a team. So I have no problem with the suggestion of Mr. and my brother from another mother, Bill and Hop, and Jen, or even Bob Dito. My only humble advice and request is, if you don't want to move on, and I understand the reasons why Mr. Hop had suggested that, just like I was not able to read everything within 3 days that I received the papers for, and I'm sure you guys have the equal difficulties
Just one more.
because you have other responsibilities, as well as not only just the hospital board meetings.
Yeah.
You have your own families. This is your volunteers. But I'm chairman requesting.
Yeah.
I have no problem to postpone and look through the committees again and review it. That's not a bad suggestion. What I want is make sure to the board at large, we should be given at least 2 weeks in advance whenever we're going to give, if it's in March or if it's in February, if it's in January, at least gave them a 2 weeks so they can read it very carefully. It's a complicated process. As you said, it's a $500 million or above budget. You cannot read because you received something on a Friday and you're going to drop everything else. I can bet my life, including myself. I'm the first one who said I was not able to read everything. I was able to read some, but not this 33 pages. I'm sure you guys didn't either. I'm assuming. I'm not accusing. You might have. So give at least with a compromise of 2 weeks in advance to all board members. Whenever we are agreed that after we review, will you agree with me, my brother Hab, on that or not?
I agree that that the board should have information in advance to look it over. I agree with you 100%.
If that's the case, then that's the motion. Whatever the Bob Titor made the motion, I will second on it with the condition, give 2 weeks in advance to all the board members so they have enough time to review it so they can make a good suggestion, intelligent question can be come up, and because they equally are as responsible as we are, we must show as a committee respect to their timing. Because if I couldn't do it, I'm sure you didn't did it either, but we can pretend we did. Go on the details, because if somebody say I did all this, I will ask just unquestionably one question out of these 50 pages, you won't be able to answer it. That's what I assume. So if you agreed, I will make Bob your motion as a second.
I would agree with
Bob,
Bob.
can you officially make a motion to defer it back to the budget committee for rework?
Bob, you going to make the motion or you want me to make it?
You go ahead, Bobby, you do it.
Thank you. I make the motion. We defer the budget to the finance committee, subject to all the review details given to the committee at least 4 days time before the meeting, but to the board at large should be given 2 weeks in advance of the meeting. Whatever we pass, whenever we pass from the committee.
Does Bobby get a second?
Yeah, can I ask him to just, can I question it before I second?
No, you
Bobby?
second and then we have a discussion.
All right, I'll second it. I'll second it so we can discuss it.
Okay.
Okay.
Any discussion?
Yeah, Bobby, the only, and I'm not, listen, we don't have to pass the budget in December. We could do a continuing resolution in December and pass it in January.
I agreed.
If we want to have a very detailed conversation. I'm just saying, in terms of the mechanics, if we want to get 4 days before the committee meets, that means we'd have to do it before the end of the month, and then.
No. You may be misunderstood. Let me make a correction again, so
All right.
you understand what I'm saying.
Okay.
I'm not saying when we're going to do it. It could be in January, could be in February, could be in
I got it.
March.
All right, I got it. Okay, all right.
I'm not saying do it in December.
Okay. All right.
Remember, don't forget, I used to be the chairman. I understand the pain.
Yeah, all right. All right.
Any more discussion about the motion?
Mr. Sardellis, can I just suggest something?
Sure, Rich.
That just to close the loop on what we wanted to present today, because I think it makes a lot of what we've been talking about relevant. And I think looking at a number of 116 as a loss is eye-opening and jarring. But if you look at what's on the screen right now, this ties in the projected cash flows we talked about before. And it shows that cash deficit of the $130 million a year that we are currently burning through. I started with a cash position, and I think we talked about this before, that we would have cash through March 31st of 2022. That's the $7.4 million that's in that left upper hand box. With the projections that we went through before.
Rich, I'm not seeing it on the screen.
I don't see it either.
We
I don't think we need to see this since we already have a motion and we will get the details then.
Yeah, well, let me have a vote on it. There's a motion that has been seconded. Could all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed?
Which one?
Keep the screen off so I can see.
Any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion passes.
So, I'm sorry, that was unanimous?
Sign off
Megan?
now.
Bye, Jan. Megan, you have a question?
We were in the middle of sharing documents. I just need to know who seconded the motion. I'm sorry, Chairman.
I think Bob did. Bob Detour.
Okay. And then it was passed unanimously. Thank you.
Correct.
Bob Detour, good seeing you, and God bless all of you. And I'm not gonna stop. Let's
All right.
keep going.
Could I have a motion?
To make this hospital survive.
All right.
God bless.
Motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second?
Second.
Thank you all for your time, and I know we ran late, but there's a very important issue for the corporation and something we have to get right. So I think deferring it is a good decision. Thank you all.
Okay.
Bye for now.
Night, everyone.